All right. It is time. Good morning, YouTube of Borderlands 4. I just woke up, so excuse me for this rough reading, but I wanted to make a video on these patch notes because I heard they're going to be juicy. So we're going to read this. So, Borderlands 4 update notes, October 2nd, 2025. This update includes some balance changes and updates for Vault Hunters. Welcome to our first significant balance patch. Our high level goal for Borderlands 4 is always to provide players with the tools and means to build their perfect Vault Hunter. Through the combination of gear, firmware, skills, specializations, we want players to experiment and craft theories, then put them to the test of the combat. That's very promising. I like that. For today's update, we wanted to focus on creating build diversity by adjusting in underperforming skills. AMON, in particular, gets a host of adjustments to bring him closer in line with the general power level of other Vault Hunters. Oh, and I'm a Vault Hunter main on AMON, so this is going to be very exciting to read. Vex's summons and Rafa's melee see adjustment to make those builds more viable in endgame. Ooh, that's cool because I was trying out the cat and the cat seemed a little not that great. I've yet to make Rafa yet. We have a Vex at level 21 or 22 and our Harlow is at 28 currently. I didn't get as much time to play as I wanted because currently I'm looking for a job and it's been very rough. Finally, Harlow has a couple of tweaks to make sure stasis is getting value for players. Oh, that is awesome because that's actually what I'm playing on Harlow's because I really wanted to play the stasis build because I'm a huge Mass Effect fan and I love the add up to Mass Effect where you could pick things up and throw them around, and I love stasis so far, and I need to get back on that character. Looking to the future, we are investigating stats and behaviors on class mods, rep kits, shields, and firmware to make sure that they provide avenues to avenues to create greater build diversity. They're looking at class mods, rep kits, shields, and firmware. Yeah, there's that one shield that literally just trumps all their shields, and that's that's the rocket one. It is insane. Rep kits. I haven't used too many rep kits at level 60. I think I'm using the shiny war paint is what I'm currently using. And there are some class mods that I'm an Amon main. So there's some class mods that I really haven't used too much over others. I think I'm using a purple one at the moment, actually. I'll have to look when we get on here today. We are also planning to fix a number of unintended interactions. Good. There needs to be balance in a game, especially the crit knife, and I'm sure that's going to get some sort of flat crit chance. That's probably one of the ways I see that it gets fixed. These exploits prevent us from creating meaningful build diversity as they trivialize content that is otherwise meant to challenge players. Hey, I like that. I want the game to have more challenge. We're excited about the future of Borderlands 4 and its upcoming post-launch roadmap. This is just the start of an exciting year of updates and content, and we can't wait to experience it all with our community. Please restart your game. Change list. Weekly activities. Weekly big encounter boss has switched to a tougher variant of a different existing boss with an event more rewarding loot pool for those to take it on. I haven't done the weekly big encore boss, I think, since the first week. So I think we'll check that out and see if they did anything. The weekly wild card. I've only done it like one time, and I was trying to get the rainbow vomit shotgun, and I enjoyed doing that, and I enjoyed using that. But there's just so much dialogue that is really hard to do those wild card missions. I hope that they take out the dialogue It was easy to run through because I had the noisy cricket, so I was able to just blast my way across the map, which is fun. Maurice has moved, so we got to find that again. Okay. Additional changes added auto clearing to Borderlands 4's stale shaders. Stale shaders? Like potato chips? They got some stale potato chip shaders over there. On version update, preventing performance and degrade. Oh, I can't even talk now. On some PCs. Harlow balance adjustments. Action skill 0 point. Stasis slam damage was increased. Wow. And stasis immune damage was increased. Okay. It was increased by 30%. Maybe it wasn't doing too good in endgame because I'm leveling with it right now, and I feel like it's doing pretty well leveling. So maybe endgame it wasn't performing that great. Rafa. So I have not made Rafa yet, so this I'm just going to go over very quickly. His action skills, Apotheosis Lance increased its damage by 10. Capstone's People Person Project Raju damage scales increased 12% per second from up to 10. Basilisk damage increased to 15%. Hazard damage increased by 25%. Yeah, that's the one thing. The hazards don't. I've tried using the hazards on AMON and they didn't really feel that strong. So I'm actually pretty curious on trying out the hazards on him today. Project Gorgon, damage increased by 17%. Passives, People Person, El Carton, critical hit damage increased to 8% from 7%. Bonus shock damage increased from 8% to 7%. Per my last, double damage chance increased to 6% from 5%. Action skill Arc Knives, melee damage increased by 12%. Dash damage increased by 5%. Passives, The Year's Gimmick, The Handshake Deal. Melee damage increased to 9% from 7% to the last. Skill damage increased to 8% from 6%. El Pergus, splash damage increased to 9% from 7%. Liquidation, damage increased by 50%. I don't know what it originally was at, but that's a big bump. Collaborative Ignition, bonus damage increased to 8% from 6%. So I'm assuming these are, they're all low because I'm assuming they all stack. They all go to like most skill points in the game are like +5. So that's what I'm assuming because I have not played Rafa. I'll be able to give more insight on other characters that I actually have played. I don't know how to pronounce that. Singuria. Duration increased to 14% from 12%. Or sorry, 14 seconds from 12 seconds. Sorry, I'm just waking up yet. Melee damage increased to 4% from 3% per point. I can't pronounce it. Action skill duration increased to 7% from 6% per point. And then we got Vex here. Action skills Incarnate. Phase explodes damage increased by 16.6%. And Eldritch Blast increased by 9%. So it seems like a lot of stuff's getting like a 10% boost all around the board for a lot of characters. Now I will say my Vex is only like level 21 and Incarnate felt kind of weak. Like you'd shoot the little blast out and it felt like it just kind of didn't really do much damage. Maybe it does more now. I'll have to try it out today too. Vix or augments Vex Calination. Energy Vampire damage increased by 25%. That's the little AoE that she puts around herself. So that's a big bump. So this is just doing, I think this is the one that does constant damage. Vex Capstones, Heart Piercer. So we're not at the point where we're at the capstones yet, but Heart piercer damage increased by 22%. Desecration hazard damage increased by 50%. So I see that hazard damage. So why did Rafa's hazard damage only get a 25% buff, but Vex got a 50% buff? Interesting. I wonder if Rafa's was doing more damage than Vex's. I'm not entirely sure. Desecration. Airborne burst damage increased by 48%. Damn. Airborne burst damage? Oh, this is the one that you shoot out, and if it's airborne, it blows up before it hits them. Okay. Damn, that's a big damage increase. Geist wave damage increased by 41. So they really increased her capstones. Rafa's capstones didn't get as much love as Vex's, so I'm wondering if Rafa's was performing okay and Vex's was just not. Passives. Vexcalation. Radiant Attunement now deals 7% splash damage from 6% per point. Okay, so it's the 1% increase. I mean, they don't want to go too crazy because then they don't want to bring it back down, right? Dread Light hazard damage increased by 100%. I wonder if there was something going on there that they, that they had to increase that hazard damage by 100%. So she has a 50% hazard damage on Desecration, and then she's got 100 on Dreadlight. I'm gonna have to check that out. Eris Arcane now increases skill damage by 9% from 8% per point. Action skills phase familiar. Ooh, so we get some kitty love here. Trouble health increased by 10%. Trouble damage increased by 21.9%. Yeah, the damage just wasn't there. The health was okay, but the cat's damage just did not feel good leveling with it. So I'm probably going to check that out today. It would be nice to try out the cat. Here comes Trouble. Outburst damage. Violent outburst. I believe this is like an AoE. Damage increased by 12.5%. Vorpal Fang damage increased by 34%. If this is the passive, this is the skill that I think the cat goes invisible and then pops out and does damage. I think this is what this is. I'd have to double check. Capstone, here comes Trouble. Trouble Bubble damage increased by 33%. I have not looked at this capstone, so I'm not entirely sure. Passive, here comes Trouble. Blood is magic. It now increases action skill damage by 8% from 7% per point. Okay. Claw and Bang now increases melee damage by 8% from 6%. Wow, they gave her more melee. Okay. I did like, there was a melee ability that you got to throw a knife, which is pretty neat. So this will be cool to play with. The Fourth Seal. Fell inscription, sorry. Melee damage increased to 7% from 6% per point. Reoccurrence now increases melee damage by 0.2% per stack from, oh wow. Okay, nice. Phase damage. Oh, they buffed the dagger. Okay. That's the dagger I was just talking about that you get to throw. Oh, here we go. Now we got AMON. Oh my lord. Ooh. Me likey. Alright, so for those of you that don't know my channel, I stream on Twitch TV. My name is Fluffy Mr. Stumpy on there. And our main is AMON. So I'm looking forward to this today. We're going to be checking out AMON again and messing around with his skill trees live on Twitch. So if you guys haven't followed me yet on there, feel free to do so. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. I'd fully appreciate it. And let's get into AMON's. So action skills, Scourge has had its maximum vengeance increased by 50%, making it able to absorb more damage and deal more damage with Forge Whip when consumed. Now, I'm not a huge fan on the Converge or the blue tree. It is very hard to see with his shield. So We'll probably check it out, but I'm not like, hey, let's hop in that blue tree and try out the whips again. But maybe. Um, so the Forge Whip damage got increased by 27%. Augments, Vengeance, Blast, Chill damage increased by 45%. Molten Rebuke damage increased by 86%. Wow. That is the shield that ricochets and does fire damage. Internal Winter, Massive Forge Wave deals increased damage by 100%. Damn. Stormland's damage increased by 52%. Stormland's detonation damage increased by 10%. And I'm assuming that's like per stack because the detonation stack. I would assume. I'm not actually sure. Because it stacks up 10 times. Then we got Capstone's Vengeance. Glacial Rapture. Capstone now has a 60-second cooldown down from 70 seconds. Okay. So a 10% reduction in cooldown. Forge Whip damage increased by 16%. Glacial Rupture Fissure damage increased by 41%. Wrathful damage increased by 46%. Passives Vengeance Scorched Kraos now increases ordnance damage by 6% per point from 5. Battleborn now increases gun damage by 4% from 3% per point. Scar Tissue now increases maximum health and rep healing kit by 9% from 8% per point. Eternal now increases action skill duration by 5% up to 4% per point. World Breaker damage increased by 50%, and this is the ground pound that sends out a giant fire wave. I tried doing this, and it did not feel well, considering that there was a pretty significant cooldown for it. So we could maybe try that out again. I was trying that, but again, I'm not a big fan of the whip. Winter's Kiss now increases damage by 10% up from 8% per point. Strike the Anvil now deals 15% of damage dealt up to 12% per point. Oh, wow. That's a... Damn. These are some big buffs for Blue Tree. Forge Axe damage increased by 12%. Okay. Only 12? Because the huge issue with Crucible is that the Fire Axe just doesn't feel worth throwing compared to the Ice Axe because the utility it brings. So I'm really hoping to read that the Fire Axe has some significant buffs. Otherwise, I'm going to be like, what's the point of throwing the Fire Axe when I can just instantly freeze things? I'm hoping to also see some buffs to the drones because the drones just felt like they did nothing. So I think this is what we're going to try when we first get in as Crucible here if we like what we see. Double Edge's Twinned Forge Axe damage increased by 10%. Augments Cybernetics. Axe and Stone. Action skill cooldown restoration increased to 40% from 33%. Axe and Stone Ordnance restoration from 40% to 33%. I don't know if this is still going to make me use this Axe and Stone. We'll see. Because this requires you to like throw the, either the fire or the ice axe. And again, the fire axe doesn't really feel like it does anything. So we'll definitely give this a whirl and see how it feels. Yeah. Endless War gun damage taken increased to 20% from 15% per prime stack. So they give this a 5%, but this was okay. So this lets you throw an axe and it sticks in them and then it primes them, right? And then however many axes are in there, they take more damage. But the issue with this is the fact that when you throw it, there's like an animation and then there's a cooldown time on like bringing out your like an artificial axing thing, an artificial timer of when you could bring your axes out because it's not instant. You can't just keep throwing, right? You throw, you wait a couple, like a millisecond, and then you got to bring it back out, animation, and then throw again. So you weren't really able to get that much gun damage taken into a mob before that axe would then just disappear. So like the duration of it sitting in the mob just wasn't long enough for me to really care. Hour of the hammer, forge hammer damage increased by 14%. Blade Tempest forge skill damage increased by 13%. Blade Tempest forge skill detonation damage increased by 4%. Capstone Cybernetics. Snowmaw damage increased by 38%. Storm Surge Impact damage increased by 10%. Storm Surge Forge Storm damage increased by 60%. I believe this is the one where you throw your twin swords and it makes a giant AoE lightning storm. That's a big damage increase. Conflagrate Capstone's fire trail damage increased by 100%. I mean, right now, I believe fire feels the weakest in the game. It doesn't feel great. And I love fire, but the amount of negative impact that elements have in the game right now, there's just so many armor and shield enemies compared to health enemies, so it's a bit rough to use some of these capstones and cybernetics. We'll see how they feel though today. Passives. Gathering Storm now increases elemental damage by 3% per stack from 2. Execution now increases critical damage by 4% from 3%. Destruction Engine increases forge skill damage by 6% up to 5% per point. Destruction Engine now increases detonation damage by 8% from 6%. Tempered Pyre Forge Axe damage increased by 19%. Tempered Ice Forge damage increased by 18%. Masterwork now increases Forge Drones damage by 10% from 7% per point. Okay, that maybe. I feel like this could have used a little bit more of a buff, in all honesty. I get that it's 10% per point, but they really didn't. Minions don't really feel that. They just wail and wail and wail and wail and wail and wail and wail. And then you look at them and then you shoot them and then they're dead. That's how it feels. But again, we'll have to see what these buffs feel like. Masterwork now increases Forge Drone's duration from 8% to 5% per point. See, I didn't really have an issue with the Forge Drone duration with the class mod that you get. It's the one legendary one that you just get to spawn them and they get increased duration. I don't really have an issue with the duration, but I mean, it's nice to see a buff for it, I guess. I wish these Forge Drones got a little bit more love, but well, that's the build we're going to be testing here in a bit. Tempered Lightning. Forge Drone damage increased by 13%. Lightning Rod Elemental Bolt damage now deals 40% of damage up to 30% per point. Ooh, that's nice. Okay. Escalation now increases Forge Drone's attack speed and movement speed by 5% up to 3% per point. Oh, nice. Okay. That's pretty big. Owned Point now increases Forge Drone's critical hit chance 5% per point. 5% from 4% per point. Heat exchange now increases cryo and incendiary damage by 8% from 7% per point. I wish this was a little bit higher. I get that they don't want to overtune, but some of these just didn't really feel that well. And now we got Onslaught, the red tree. And I really like the red tree, so we'll see how this feels. Onslaught shield regeneration increased to 15% per second from 10%. Onslaught rocket punch damage increased by 78%. Oh, wow. What was it like? I see that they increased these by a certain percentage, but like from what percent? They just gave it just a big old increase? I don't know. Molten Slam now has a 60-second cooldown from 80 seconds. Wow, they buffed Molten Slam. Ooh. See, I thought Molten Slam was cool, but it just is so long. There are builds that can make it cool down really fast with certain uses of your ordnance and whatnot and meleeing. If you get the fish that does melee damage, but I still need to get that thing. If you get the fish that does melee damage, you can reduce your cooldown of Molten Slam, which is nice. But it's nice to see that's a shorter cooldown, so I don't have to use the fish. And I can just rocket punch things. Molten Slam damage increased by 50%. Nice. Calamity. Fellfrost damage increased by 71%. Wow. I like this ability because it does a rocket punch and then you follow it up with a melee swing of your axe. This felt really good for leveling. Very good for leveling once you got this. And it didn't feel bad in endgame. I tried it in endgame and it felt good for mobbing. Accumulating Fist damage increased by 69%. I'm trying to remember which one this is. Is this the lightning fist or is this the one that does the detonating fist? I think this is the detonating fist. I'd have to double check. But either way, nice upgrade. Capstone's Calamity. Horcleave now has a 55-second cooldown from 65. Oh, nice. Horcleave damage increased by 11%. Horcleave detonation damage increased by 18%. That's good. I felt like the detonations just didn't really feel that great. And hopefully did we see any detonation damage increase in any of his other trees? I don't think so. Do they feel detonation is good? Because I feel like it's not that great. There's like very, very skew guns that make his detonation OP, and that's like the space laser that does like a ton of BS. But outside of that, I've tried like a hot slugger and using that because that does a lot of damage, right? It does a lot of damage, and you think it would, it doing a lot of damage, you get a lot of detonation damage. Doesn't really work that way. I was like, okay, what if I try a shotgun that has more pellets? I get more stacks. No. So it'll be interesting to see if this. I mean, Horcleave is different though on detonation. It works differently than the other detonations because this just detonates when an enemy dies, I believe. The other detonations you have to stack with either gun damage or other means. So Molten Roll now has a 70-second cooldown from 80. Okay. Stormcutter now has a 65-second from 75. I could already spam Stormcutter with the passive that lets you, whenever you melee, you get your forge skill back. I could almost spam that on one of my other builds. So I mean, it being lower is still nice. It makes it so I could spam it even more. And they gave that a damage increase. So nice. 65%. All right. Passive's Calamity. Heavy Plate now increases maximum shield capacity from 7% to 6%. Wield the Storm now increases status effect damage and status effect duration from 7% to 6%. Oh, from up to 7% from 6% per point. Trillium Knuckles now increases melee damage by 8% from 7% per point. Now increases skill damage by 4% from 3% per point. And yeah, his skills don't really feel that strong. I mean, I see that we're getting a bunch of damage increases, which is nice. I would like to see this more than just a 1%, but again, they probably don't want to overtune and then bring it down because that doesn't feel good. I'd rather them increase it a little bit by little bit, but I feel like could use a little bit more love, but it is what it is. Arbiter now increases melee damage by 2% per stack, up from 1% per stack. Immortal flare damage increased by 22%. Judgment now increases melee damage by 10% from 8% per point. All right, so some exciting stuff for AMON. Wow, he got all the buffs, and I'm definitely going to be checking this out in just a moment. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. This is my new YouTube channel. I've been streaming on Twitch for 10 years, and I really haven't done YouTube. I mostly just live stream. I enjoy that aspect of just doing that, but I want to build my community, and this is what we're doing. Thank you for watching the video. I'll catch you next time.